Very good to be back. And we are very honored to be talking to the Deputy Minister of Education himself today, Honorable Mr. Osei Adutwum is in the house. And a short story before it comes up. This man educated in the U.S. He was in California, and he is one of the most renowned educationists. As a matter of fact, he actually set up, I think there are 3 schools now, but he set up 2 schools in California. Show some love, man. Ghana from Ghana, go to California, set up 2 schools. I think a 3rd one has even been opened. And by the way, when His Excellency was then a candidate Kufadu, at that time it was not His Excellency, a candidate. And he went to LA and he heard about this guy. He went to visit his schools and he was impressed. It's like, wow. You are from Ghana, you have come to California and you're showing these kinds of levels of education. I'll need you back home eventually, And he'll tell us the rest of the story, but the rest is history. But he's in Ghana now, and he's helping in education. He's the Deputy Minister for Education. Show some love for Dr. Osei Adutwum. Yes, sir. Please sit. Thank you. Honorable, welcome.
Great.
Good to have you here, man.
It's great to be here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I like the audience.
You like that?
And one day I want to be in the audience.
One day you want to be in the audience. Next you come and join the audience.
Because they're having fun.
Well, welcome again.
Thank you.
And you have a very interesting story. You were in California for about 26 years?
26 years.
Wow. And you're into education?
Yes.
Before we go into more, just a little bit about how Mr. Kufadu ran into you back then, His Excellency, and wanted you home to help, to push.
I believe in divine providence because they could have had lunch with him anywhere in California and the hotels and everywhere, but the MPP decided that they rather have lunch for him at my school's auditorium.
Oh, so that's what they came for lunch?
Yeah, they came for lunch with a lot of people from different parts of Western United States and had a nice time there and met him. And but he was more interested in the school and probably not the audience who had come from everywhere. But when they introduced me and said he's the founder of the school and the CEO of the school, he was just amazed. And in his usual way, he wanted to compliment me. So he said, I just stood up and acknowledged the audience. And then he said, tell me how you did this. Tell me, how were you able to do this? How can a Ghanaian come to America and build schools for Americans? And I said, Nana, I'll talk to you later. Because I didn't want all that. And then he said, no, I want you to tell me how you did it. I want to compliment you in front of all these people.
So this was at the lunch?
At the lunch. So I explained it to him and told him how it was done, public-private partnership, kind of schools with a vision driven by myself and people that I've put together. And he said at the end of the description and the talk, he said, would you consider coming back to Ghana to help me change the education system?
Wow.
And I said, I will consider. Because he was very respectful to say, would you consider?
Right?
So, how can I say no to considering?
Yes.
So I said, yes, I will consider.
What went into the consideration?
Actually, the interesting thing was, I had a mentor in the U.S. He was a former congressman. Okay. He just passed on, late Mervyn Dimley. He was my mentor. And after the encounter with the candidate at the time, I went and had a meeting with him. I gave it a very serious thought. So I went and met with him. We went to Sizzlers, one of the famous lunch places. So we went to Sizzlers for lunch, and then I popped the subject. Do I go to Ghana? Do I stay here? Because actually, one of my goals, I always thought that I will be a politician at a certain part of my career. And that politics will be the last thing that I did in my career.
So there was that.
No, I wanted to be a politician.
Okay.
But I always wanted to be a politician so that I can use the political platform, whether in America or here, to change the education system. I just wanted politics to give me the platform. And once I get a platform, ensure the education was transformed.
Wow.
But I was caught between, like most immigrants, between America and here. One instinct was naturalized immediately. become an American citizen, and run for office in South Los Angeles. And
so that was also an end goal in mind. You wanted to do that?
Yes, I wanted to do that. So, and I had discussed this with my mentor, who was also a former congressman. So from Trinidad, originally from Trinidad. So both of us are immigrants. And he had been in Congress for many years, and he was even lieutenant governor of California. Wow. For him, politics was everything. He even came back from Congress and went back to the state assembly. And he was my mentor. Okay. Helped me in the opening of my school. Okay. So when I sat down with him, a consummate politician, and I asked him, Ghana or here, what would you advise? And then, as somebody who was a black immigrant, actually the first to be a black immigrant in U.S. Congress, he looked at me and said, Yao, I'll tell you one thing. You've done so well here. Your schools are one of the best in the state of California. We truly appreciate you. But I want to tell you one thing. America can do without you. But maybe your country cannot do without you. Wow. So I advise you to go back home.
Wow. So it's like you've done great, yes. But it's like you're
here. If you are not here, America will still be great.
Okay,
but maybe
you'll be needed more.
Yeah, and I took it seriously because he was also from Trinidad as an immigrant, and probably at the end of his career, that is how he concluded. So he didn't probably want me to make the mistake that he made. He went to the top of the American political system. And still felt probably he left his country, Trinidad, behind. Okay. Yeah, okay. So his advice was spot on. He actually spoke to my heart. Wow. I came home and I had a discussion with my wife, and I said, we're going to Ghana. I said, we're going to Ghana. And I said, we're going to Ghana. I said, Ghana. I said, yes. And then I had to take time to, of course,
Was she like, was hesitating to come to Ghana?
Of course, I mean, because both of us, in her family, probably mine was even more poor. We didn't grow up in a family with means. Okay. I almost didn't go to high school because my dad couldn't get 40 cedis to go and pay my deposit. So having grown up and having be able to succeed and gone to America with about 200 workers, you go to the office, everybody's calling you boss. Wow. And sometimes you feel like you have to pinch yourself. Is this me? Is this me, that poor kid who was growing up between Ashanti region and Western region in the Wasa area where my father was a cocoa farmer, and now I'm in America and I have all this. You're enjoying the American dream. American dream, true American dream. Top 5% in terms of income. I mean, you know, in America, if you make over $200,000 a year plus, you are top 5% of the population in terms of income. And you told your wife, I want to leave all that. I want to leave all that and go back. And he said, what happened? I said, I met the candidates. Who is running for president in Ghana. And I think he has such a test for transformation of the country through education. And I think I can be of use to him based on everything that I've done here and what I've learned from here and the schools that I've done, the experience that I've had. I believe that I can be useful to Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo if he becomes the president. And so we have to go. And then she agreed, and we started the preparation. And so it was very interesting. I mean, some people thought, are you crazy? We're going to leave all that and go to what? Go to what? And what is even someone said, what's the chance that he will win? And if he doesn't win, you are just a parliamentarian. So where is that going to take you? So I had to take a leap of faith and say, I believe in him. I think he will win. Because the thing was, if he doesn't win, you will not come close to helping him. And you just be in parliament. But I had such a strong conviction and faith in the Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo's opportunity to win. And the fact that, to me, education was everything. And because I had seen it, done PhD in education, master's in education, postgraduate diploma in education, taught students, built schools. I've seen everything. Been to the whole mill. Yeah. And my PhD, I focus on international education as part of my research. And therefore, I had looked at all the education systems across the world. And I have come to the conclusion that Ghana can do it. So I thought this was a wonderful opportunity, and why don't I take a chance? So I came, and I think so far I would say I'm enjoying myself. It's not always easy, but the idea that you can change the fortune of a child who has nothing, and through the vision of the president, take that child from nowhere to somewhere and have that child have the opportunity that I have had in the US, or even if they stay in this country, have the opportunity here where one day they can also pinch themselves and say to themselves, is this me? To me, that's the essence of life. Life is you get to a point in your life where you feel like, wow, how did I get here?
Wow.
And then you hear this statement that says, by the help of God and through, by dint of hard work and other mentors that you met along the way, who had faith and confidence in you.
It's very interesting how the whole thing goes in a full circle in a way. You're always passionate that you wanted to do something with the community through education.
Yes.
You wanted political office as a platform. And when you went to the US, you were thinking running for Congress, so you used the same. And then it happens to be back home.
Full circle. Yeah, so my book is coming out. And yeah, it's along that same tangent of full circle. How I grew up poor and
how poor were you? How poor was growing up?
You see, my father has started out as a cocoa farmer. So at that stage, he didn't have a lot of resources. So yes, when he started out, he didn't have a lot of resources. Later on, of course, he was moving to Ghanaian standard middle class. By the time I wanted to go to senior high school, he didn't have much. And looking for 40 cedis took him about 4 weeks going from village to village, talking to his friends. And those days, they were not selling their... they were not being paid through the bank so that he can even go to the bank and say, can you give me a loan? So it was quite a frustrating experience where a dad wants the son to go to school so bad.
Is he alive now?
No, unfortunately he's not. But he came to America twice.
Oh, really? When you went there?
Yeah, he came to the school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he came to the school and he was super excited.
Wow, this is my son's school.
Oh, yeah, this is my son's school.
University school, America.
And he likes to talk, so... So, no, he died a very happy man. That he had contributed, somebody who never went to school and had the opportunity to really raise us.
What about your mom?
My mom is still alive. And my mom came to the US.
Oh, she came there too?
Yeah, and she has some favorite stories. He's still at Jache, that's where she is. And yeah, talk about a favorite story of how he saw, there was an orange tree in my backyard. And somehow my neighbor can stretch his hand and pluck some of the orange trees, or orange fruits. So one day, my mom was home and saw the neighbor plucking some of the fruits, and then the neighbor saw her and dropped them. So I came back home and said, hey, yow, I
was watching.
So anybody who comes to her now, that's his favorite story. Or how he saw that white people also see.
So she had a chance to come and hang out with you in the US and enjoy.
It
took her to Sizzlers for lunch?
Oh, yes. Yeah, of course, he liked the fufu. And yeah, but we've had a wonderful time with my parents, and especially my mom. And we always, whenever I go to visit her in the village, she always talk about all the things that she had to do to carrying kinky to go and sell, and leaving the cocoa farm to come and take care of us at Jache. Because those days in the western region and in Wassa and Tubam precisely, the school was just from primary 1 to primary 3. So they had to make a critical decision. If we stayed there, we were not going to get quality education. So when I was starting school, she had to come to Ashanti region, come to Jache and take care of me. And during vacation, we always go back to the farm and weed around the cocoa farm and plug the cocoa and harvest and do all the needful as cocoa farmers do.
Well, coming back to Ghana, from LA, the educational system, the attitude of the students, and then coming to Ghana and now being in this position, dealing with the Ghana students, and what's the difference in there? Are they all school be school, or are there differences in the cultural way how our kids see education and how they do it there? What have you?
It's very interesting. And people ask me this question everywhere I go around the world, whether I speak at a place. They ask me, what do you see? And I tell them that what I see in Ghana is that our children are ready to learn.
Ready to learn.
Ready to learn. In urban America, it takes you so much effort to get the children to focus on the instruction. And because you walk into a classroom where, I think my first day, when I was a substitute teacher first, before I became a regular teacher, in the UK they call it supply teacher. Unlike here, if a teacher is not in school, somebody has to be there. So I did that job as a substitute teacher. They call me early morning and say, okay, go to school A, take care of class B, and that kind of. I did that for about 1.5 years. And I remember the first time I walked into the school, the teacher was there just before he was going to some training. So he took me to his class and introduced me to the students and said, he's going to be your teacher for the day. I have to go and do some work outside of here. And I said, good morning, students, and nobody responded. And I said, yes, that is welcome to America. So you are going from a country where teacher is the king in the classroom.
Yeah.
Where whatever he says is the law.
Yeah.
Where he's seen as the sage on stage.
Yes.
The teacher knows it all.
Yes.
And when you talk, everybody should be quiet. Into an environment where
the teacher is
nobody. The teacher is there to beg the children to study some for him. I remember one day in my class when I became a regular teacher, there was a child who was sleeping. Early morning, he's sleeping in my class. And I said, Johnny, wake up, wake up. Why are you doing this? He woke up, he lifted his head like that and said, am I bothering you?
Wow, they say, no, mother.
He said, look at all those children who are giving a tough time. These kids are not paying attention to. I'm sleeping. What's your problem?
At least I'm sleeping. I'm not bothering you.
You know. So, but basically, when you talk about education system and the Ghanaian system, and I think we have the greatest opportunity to really transform our schools faster than most places in the world where they have all the resources. Because the important raw material, the student is ready. The student is ready. And to the extent that we can equip our teachers and train them on new ways of teaching where the teacher doesn't know it all. Even if you know it, fake it as if you don't know it all. Allow the children to take part in the discussion. Let the ideas come to the fore. Don't be the sage on stage, and before you know, you are getting so much from them. You are getting the kids to tell you things that you had never imagined that they knew. And you can use Socratic teaching strategies driven by questions, and then they will be answering and responding. And once you do those things, what is going to happen is that the children are contributing to knowledge. And then you are creating critical thinkers. And you are not creating an environment where they have to memorize and tell you, no. That is not how you create a critical mind and a nation with a critical mindset so that we can transform.
That's a huge problem though. So
it's a huge opportunity.
Oh, okay. I like how you put it.
It's a huge opportunity because the kids love it. If you create that environment.
Yeah, but the teachers don't. The teachers want to be handling the class their way.
Let me tell you, the teachers will come to love it because that is less work. If you create that environment, creating it is difficult because I remember I was sent to training to teach that way. When I went to the US and I was teaching, the classroom was still just like here. Most places were just like here. And I was sent to training. I came back to use cooperative learning strategies and approaches. And the first 2 weeks was not easy. The students said, you are the teacher. You are supposed to teach us. Why are you asking us to tell you what we know? So initially, even the kids will not appreciate it.
They want to be taught.
They want to be taught. And eventually, as I got a hang of it and the students began to appreciate it, the classroom was lively. That was one of my best classes. When they came, we had fun together because the environment was conducive for exchange of ideas. I used to take the kids outside the classroom. When I was teaching the mathematics, I felt math was everywhere and we shouldn't be sitting in classroom. We had a place within the school where we had a perfect circle. We called that place the quad area. There was a perfect circle, the lawn that had been cut into a perfect circle. And that is why I did my teaching of circle every year. Take the kids there, I say, walk the diameter, they walk the diameter, walk the radius, they walk the radius. By the time we leave there, the students who were kinesthetic learners, you know, we have different intelligences. Kinesthetic learners are people who have to move in order to learn. And if you tell them to sit in their seat and don't get the opportunity for them to jump up and down and move around, they will not understand you. Logical learners are a few. We're auditory learners, people who learn because they hear you.
Do you pay attention to those differences in Ghana? And also, what do you think about the whole notion that in Ghana, we don't teach our children how to think, we teach them what to think? How do you assess our education system in terms
That is kind of interesting. Did you get your PhD in education? You tell me all this about education theory. You did your research work. Yeah, you see, the thing is this. The new education reform that has recently been launched is premised on that. We look at the Singaporean and all those things. So the minister, when he launched it, talked about how this is going to transform the way we teach and learn in the Ghanaian classroom. And it has begun from KG to primary 6. And then we're going to build on it. So basically, that is where we are heading. But it's going to need some kind of resources and training. But talking about thinking, I'm sure you did the A-level if you went to high school in Ghana. I did the A-level. And the A-level, there was a conscious effort to get us to think through taking a class in logic and reasoning, the general paper. So the general paper was an explicit way of getting us to think by saying you have to take a class in logic and reasoning. So those of us who went through sixth form in Ghana and took the courses in logic and reasoning, you had left school with a skill set that enabled you to reason. So that was taken out when we did away with sixth form. But we never had any course that focused on critical thinking, logic, and reasoning. Now, if you don't do that, then you have to make sure that you are integrating critical thinking into every single subject. And that is where you go to what we call in education the Bloom taxonomy, or now it's the new Bloom taxonomy. So it's like a rubric against which you teach, against which you improve critical thinking. On the Bloom taxonomy, the lowest level of learning is when you are teaching towards comprehension and facts and memorization. And you can do analysis and evaluation going up. Evaluation and the analysis, that is where subjects like compare and contrast come in.
Yeah.
But the highest level of learning, according to the new Bloom taxonomy, is when you create. Create is, for example, instead of asking students to talk about the effect of pollution, causes of pollution, you ask them to create a city without pollution. And they work in groups and begin to talk about how do we eliminate pollution. A city without pollution means our cars should not be emitting, carbon dioxide. And all how do we do that? Electronic cars. How do we do this? So the kids are going to sit there thinking that these are the things that we need to do in order to create a city without pollution. And as a result, at the end of it, the thing will stick in their brain. The retention will be so high.
But because you have engaged their creativity every second of the way.
So that's the highest level of learning. But if you just want them to memorize and say that, tell me the cause of when they memorize, cause of pollution 1, there's 2. That is not how
do you feel about the fact that we still do through is it true or false?
True or false is the West
test in Ghana, see a quiz, true or false?
No. That is not the way to go. I tell you, there was a story, I think the quiz mistress of the science and math quiz was on record by saying that they went to Spain and the student didn't do well because the questions were kind of different. Comprehension is not the way to go. In fact, one of the things that have come, there's a program for international student assessment called PISA. Ghana used to participate in that, and I think 2013 or so we checked out because we're the last but one country in the world. It was bad. And we checked out. Now, we checked out, and I thought it was a terrible decision. What we should have rather done was to say, why is it that we are not doing well? And then begin to see how do we do well. For example, one of the things, when I did the research, showed that students who were in the PISA and taking this assessment, they were taught by teachers with bachelor's degree as the minimum qualification. And until last year, our teachers only needed diploma. You needed to be prepared for diploma. Diploma is 2 years and 1 year practicum. So from high school, you may not be the best and the brightest. You go to College of Education, and you have to do pedagogy, the way you teach, and then the content itself in 2 years. And go and do 1 year practicum. And how can we produce the best students in the world? So now the minister took the decision, of course, with cabinet approval, that our College of Education should actually lead to the award of a bachelor's degree, 4 years, before you can then go to the classroom and teach. In the meantime, we have teachers who are also teaching. How do we improve their skill set? And in this country, one of the things that we're not doing was that we're not giving teachers the time to be taught whilst they are still teaching. You see, we talk about continuous professional development or CPD, but there was no time set aside for CPD. In other places where things have worked so well, days are set aside where students don't go to school and teachers go so that they can be taught. And for the first time, to commend the Ghana Education Service, last week they did the first CPD day, which is called People Free Day, where students don't go to school and teachers go.
Teachers go
and at least we have begun that process, and we have to have that in order for us to really equip the teachers to do well. So basically, you have a system here where we have all the essential elements of what will make us the best, but there were so many gaps. And what we are doing now is to bridge those gaps so that we can compete with the rest of the world. So that it's not Ghana against African countries. No, that to me is not what we need to do. Recently I landed at the domestic airport, and there were some guys behind me. The airport, of course, the domestic airport is beautiful, and the guys were saying, wow, Ghana, we are blessed. Look at our domestic airport. This is more beautiful than that of Niger. And they burst into laughter, and they were giggling and happy. And I was saying to myself, why are we not compare our international airport to that of Dubai? Why are we so happy that we are better than other African countries?
Wow. Honorable, is this getting interesting? Please, let's hold it there. I'm going to take a commercial break. When we come back, we'll continue.
Thanks.
So stick around. We'll be right back. Folks, we'll be right back.
The KSM Show.
We're back. And yeah, Honorable, there's this psyche, you know, and you're saying it, you know, we always compare ourselves to the lowest common denominator and not the high ones, you know. Yes. And is this part of the educational thing? How do we change this using education?
We see, in education, there's something that sometimes we lose sight of, and it's not just the content that is being studied. It is also about what is called the hidden curriculum. What are the messages that you are burying in the curriculum in such a way that as the students study this curriculum, they're also changing their mindset. So when you look at the curriculum, there's something called Our World and Our People, which create awareness among the students as to who they are and their place in the world. So basically, as I was saying, sometimes you can compare yourself to the lowest, the lowest, and then you are excited. You know, there's a proverb, a saying that I'm a prison in Iran. I'm a prison in Iran. So somebody's in prison, he compare his fate to that of somebody can say, I'm okay. That guy has been sentenced for 30 years and mine is just 5 years. So you become complacent and you are happy that, okay, I'll stay in my one corner and do my 5 years and go home because he has 30 years. So we sometimes can be caught up in what I call the African mediocrity trap, which is we are better off than Sierra Leone, we are better off than this country, and therefore we are okay.
We should be happy.
So the people who were comparing our domestic airport to that of Niger, they had a point. But I was also saying to myself, for how long are we going to be caught up in this mediocrity trap? We have to begin to understand that we can be better and we can compete against some of these so-called developed nations. And it's just going to take a fierce determination, and especially when you have a visionary president. And I tell people, it's not about politics. We have a visionary president, somebody who has a picture of where we want to take the country to. And to the extent that we can begin to break loose of things that hold us down and hold us back, then you have an opportunity to transform this country. So when you look at education, it gives us the greatest opportunity for transformation. In terms of the mindset of the students. So when you are teaching, these are things you have to take a look and say, no, we are better than Sierra Leone, but it doesn't mean anything because South Korea, 1960, our per capita income was better than them. How is it that now they are way ahead of us and we have to get the sense of urgency that something went wrong, and we cannot continue to sit there.
Yeah.
And we have to have that sense of urgency.
I like what you just said about the sense of urgency. And when His Excellency took over, he said something that I like quoting. He said, "I'm in a hurry."
Yes.
Then I said,
Yes.
I wonder how it feels like to be in a hurry with a nation that has no sense of urgency. You see what I'm saying? Because everything you've taught about, the mindset, the skills and everything that we have to teach our children to grow up, the teachers need to understand that to teach it. Do we have and nothing against the teachers in Ghana, no, but do we have how our teachers at that level where they propagate that into the mindset of the children they are teaching?
The teachers will take a cue from us. As political leaders, they will take a cue from all of us as leaders of this nation, our chiefs, our pastors, everyone. You see, there was one point in time in the U.S. Under the Reagan administration where they felt they were slipping and that the Soviet Union was going to beat them in their own game. So they commissioned a group of people that came up with a study that was called A Nation at Risk. Nation at Risk rallied Americans, irrespective of the political divide, to come together and see how they can change the fortunes of their nation. They saw public education as slipping and things were not going well. So when it came to charter schools, for example, public-private partnership schools, both sides of the political divide, Democrats and Republicans came together and said something needed to be done about public education because that was the difference maker for the poor of America. And at that point, it wasn't about politics. It was about coming together because our nation was at risk. So when the president talk about Ghana Beyond Aid, sometimes I look at it and say, wow, this is what should begin to get us to think Ghana and think about Ghana first and the idea that we can transform the fortunes of this nation. And it's not about MPP, it's not about NDC, it's about all of us saying to ourselves, are we going to sit here the next 60 years for South Koreans to, I tell the story of how they came to the Ministry of Education and asked us, why are we doing better than you economically? And they showed us 3 graphs. The first graph was the South Korea 1960 per capita income of South Korea and Ghana. Ours was $189 per capita. South Korea was $158. We were better than them.
So we were better than them.
Of course, in 1960. Only 6% of their population had high college education. Now they showed us the second graph, and the second graph was just talking about the per capita income now. And of course, they are way ahead of us. And they asked us, why are we better than you? And
why did we beat you?
Why did we beat you? And then they showed us the third graph, and that was the gross tertiary enrollment ratio of South Korea and Ghana. Ghana's gross tertiary enrollment ratio, that is, if you take the youth between the age of 18 to 23, out of every 100, if you want to find out how many of them are in tertiary, Ghana is 16.19. South Korea is 93.6.
Wow.
So they showed us that graph and said, this is why we have outpaced you. When both of us became independent, we focused on education, educated the vast majority of our people, made sure they had access to education, and not only did we educate them, we also aligned education with industry. So when we were going to heavy manufacturing, a number of our students were being led into engineering. And as a result, that symbiosis between education and manufacturing propelled us into prominence. And this is why we are better than you. And by the way, they were here to give us a loan to build the Eastern University. So they said, this is why we are here to give you a loan. Because if you don't get the vast majority to go into the tertiary level in a relevant education environment, you are not going to transform yourself. And they were not telling us something we didn't know. Because in the 21st century, in the knowledge economy, it's not about how many factories you build. It's about how do you change your education system to make it more responsive to the needs of your people. It's about how do you create critical thinkers who can then add value to the factories that you are building, who can create an app that will bring more customers to come and buy your product.
Yeah.
And by the time you know, the young men and women have come up with an idea that have changed the way you manufacture your product to make it more competitive and compete against other companies around the world. So education is not just a piece of the puzzle in the 21st century. Education is the whole puzzle. And it has to be a relevant education.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be memorize some facts for me and then tell me what I told you.
Yeah. And I remember some years ago, 2 or 3, maybe slightly longer, then Ishmael Yamson made a comment that when they recruit people from the universities, graduates, the top line, when they get into the world of work, it takes them 2 years to train them just to get them to the entry-level position. You see, so somebody who has graduated with the upper whatever, enters the world of work and is even below entry level. That's why the education. So when we're talking about aligning industry to education, that's what came up to my mind. And how, as our educational system, fixing that, addressing that major gap there, industry and the education system and what's happening, you know.
No, we have to. I won't sit here and lie to you. Over the years, we have not. And when you talk about all the education reforms that we've embarked upon in this country, I would rather have industry folks in the driver's seat when it comes to curricular reform. I would rather have the universities also sitting in the front seat when it comes to education reform, and not us as the ministry driving it.
Okay.
And that is what we have to change. And
so the
we
big
are
problem
now
is that the ministry has been driving that agenda,
of course,
rather than industry and academia.
We set up a committee. We may have Anamwa Mensah, eminent educationists, and they do very well. But I think the sense of urgency should rather be coming from industry. I want industry people to make noise. Because you see, it's hit your bottom line. If productivity is poor, how can you compete with other companies around the world? So industry should know that ensuring that we have critical thinkers is in their long-term interest and survival. And therefore have to begin to look at the fact that we are not going to leave this just to the academicians and the ministry and the universities. So a friend of mine attended a meeting where one professor made a comment that their students are not doing well because the high schools doesn't prepare them well, and he made a comment to the effect that garbage in, garbage out. I was not there, but the friend told me and said, my response would have been, universities must see themselves as recycling plants. When garbage comes in, it has to recycle and come out a finished fine product that is useful to society. So we shouldn't have a situation of garbage in, garbage out. But also, I had to cut them some slack. Invariably, we also develop a curriculum without their input. So, for example, if you look at what we've done, what they did many years ago, creating agriculture pathway in the high school that you can do agric. You know, during our time, you just took one class in agricultural science. You did your biology and chemistry, and you go to the university to do agric science. Then they changed it and asked students to do agric as a pathway like science, like with animal husbandry and crop and all those kind of things. And the universities are saying, that is not the type of people we want. We want those who do one class in agricultural science and do biology and chemistry. And by the way, if they do fixes, we can talk about agricultural mechanics and all those mechanization. But don't give us students who you are teaching agric in high school, give them a broad background and we'll work on them. And yet, they did not incorporate them and came out with a curriculum that the universities don't want. And some universities will not even accept those students to do agric. So what I think needs to be done, which now that we are looking at reforming the junior high school and high school curriculum, is to make sure that industry is at the table. And I want industry to make noise about, just like you said, and say, we are not getting what we need. So education, let's talk and pull things together. And education now has also recognized that that has to happen. Because otherwise we'll be spinning our wheels. Sometimes, you see, we talk about graduate unemployment, right? And of course, the number one thing everyone will say is that the economy is not expanding enough. I seem to have another opinion, that yes, the economy may not be expanding enough, but are we also churning out qualified people that industry cannot afford not to hire? So if you had a situation where a company is hiring 5 people, 500 people go for an interview, then they begin to realize that, wow, such a quality. No, let's hire more than 5. Let's do 20, because why should we allow these people to go? They will add value to us.
Sometimes they don't even get the 5.
The 5. So graduate unemployment cannot just be blamed on the fact that the economy is not expanding. We also, as education system, have to look at ourselves and say, are we actually turning out, graduating the people that the industry wants so bad that they wouldn't be employing people from India and from other places, or wouldn't say, okay, did you go to school abroad? No, look at Ashesi University. After 6 months of national service, their graduates get jobs.
Yeah.
And Ashesi University graduate walks into your office, the self-confidence to engage you. You can it's just palpable. It's just, you look at it and say, wow. And as a result, they get a job. They come with confidence. They look at you in the eye and have conversations with you. They walk into an interview with any international company and they have a chance, a better chance than others that may have gone to other universities. So the future of the transformation is with us and it's within us. And we cannot just say that the economy is not expanding. No, it's about, can we change the way students teach? And that is why when you're doing reform, it's important for you to look at the intended outcome. Industry should have a say. Then we work our way backwards. That given the fact that industry needs this kind of person, and society wants people who can think about the history of their country and know who they are. Therefore, let's do history, like now we're doing, but also make sure if we don't think in the short and medium term, we can incorporate critical thinking skills within the curriculum, then why don't we do logic and reasoning as part of the curriculum? There will be nothing wrong with that. So basically, you have to look at yourself and say, how do I get the outcome that I want? How do I get a graduate, self-confident Ghanaian student, a global citizen who is Ghanaian at the core and think about his country first? That is the kind of student I want. Therefore, my curriculum is going to be designed, both the explicit and the hidden curriculum should be designed with that in mind so that I can turn out that kind of person.
Show some love, man. Show some love. Wow. Well, you know, you're getting so into this thing, I've forgotten to ask you some personal stuff, you know. You're married, of course, so who's your...
Selena.
Selena?
Yeah, she's from Jobbing.
Jobbing. And you met here or you went to America?
Abroad.
Oh, you went abroad?
Yeah, we all had gone as Ghanaians migrating abroad.
Migrating abroad.
And we met.
Did you go to school together? Or
no, church.
Oh, church?
Yeah, you see, church is a very interesting place.
I see. So we went to the same church and then you saw her and
yes.
You say, oh boy, and
it happened.
And it happened. How many children?
2.
2? Okay. And they are there or they're all back with you now?
One is there, one is here. One is over there, one is here.
Okay. Wow. And what do you do to relax? What do you do to have fun when you're not thinking about education?
Interestingly, I like to write.
Your book is coming out, you said?
Yeah, book is coming out.
Okay.
Come and talk about it on this show.
Right
here.
You heard him here, man.
I like to write and I love reading.
Okay.
I relax with reading.
Fantastic.
And my favorite author is Malcolm Gladwell.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the last book that has come out is Talking to Strangers, and I'm enjoying it. How Chamberlain talked to Hitler so many times and couldn't figure him out, and the Second World War came. so I love reading Malcolm Gladwell, Tipping Point, What the Dog Saw, David and Goliath, Blank. I love all his books.
Wow.
And he's my favorite author, and I read every book that he writes. So I love reading, and also I love listening to music. Daddy Lumba, every music of his, I love it. Yeah.
Fantastic. You like dancing as well?
Who?
Do you like dancing?
Dancing, yeah. They think I have some good moves. But they underestimate me. They think I don't know how to dance. So about 2 weeks ago, I went to a funeral and they played an adult campaign song. And I danced, and by the time I knew it went viral. And everybody
Honorable, thank you so much for honoring our invitation, coming to share your great ideas on education. And we really, really, really hope and trust that, you know, you bring your energy and focus and help push this great educational drive that we need to be on, so that we will stop comparing ourselves to the lowest common denominator, but those who are up and competing. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Short life one more time. And we will be right back.
The KSM Show.